In the picturesque and quiet countryside of Bavaria, Germany, surrounded by dense woods and farmlands, there stood a lonely farmhouse. It looked like any other building in the quaint village for most of its existence. However, this all changed in March of 1922 when a series of unsettling incidents occurred in the farmhouse, which culminated in one of the most gruesome and unsolved crimes in history. The name of the farmhouse, Hinterkaifeck, has since become synonymous with unspeakable horror and serves as a grim reminder of the evil that can lurk in the most unexpected places. The story began like any other in the sleepy village of Fies. Andreas Gruber, a grizzled 72-year-old farmer, lived in the farmhouse with his wife Cecilia, their daughter Victoria, and their two young grandchildren, Joseph and Maria. Life was simple and uneventful until one day in early March when Andreas noticed a set of peculiar footprints in the fresh snow leading up to the house. These tracks were unlike anything he'd seen before and seemed out of place in the tranquil setting. He examined them closely, but they offered no clues as to who might have left them. What was even more puzzling was that there were no tracks leading away from the house. This peculiarity sent a shiver down Andreas's spine, but he dismissed it as mere curiosity. However, the events that followed turned the idyllic landscape surrounding the farmhouse into a sinister stage for a terrifying drama. Several nights after Andreas had spotted the footprints, strange sounds were heard echoing through the silent house. Footsteps were heard pacing back and forth above them in the attic, and doors were found wide open in the morning as if someone had been inside. During these unsettling nights, the family huddled together in their beds, too afraid to venture out and investigate the noises. They couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched, hunted by an unseen presence that stalked their home. Amidst this mounting terror, the family's maid, presumably driven by an overwhelming sense of fear and paranoia, abandoned her position, leaving them in dire need of domestic help. Understandably, the prospect of staying in a haunted house was too much for her to bear. However, in a twist of fate or perhaps desperation, the family's son-in-law, who was away serving in the army, suggested that his wife, Victoria, return to her parents' house to help out. His intention was likely to offer support to his family during this time of distress. However, on March 31st, 1922, the arrival of Victoria coincided with the beginning of a nightmare from which there would be no awakening. From that point forward, everything changed, hurtling the inhabitants of the farmhouse into a terrifying abyss. After the arrival of Victoria, the atmosphere of dread and foreboding intensified. The family retreated into their rooms, each consumed by their own fears and suspicions. They locked their doors and tried to ignore the haunting sounds above them, hoping that whatever was in the attic would eventually leave them alone. Around 8 p.m. that evening, Andreas decided to tend to his animals in the barn. As he stepped outside, the others soon followed, each seeking solace in numbers. As they worked, the rhythmic sounds of hammering echoed from the attic, growing louder and more intense. Terror gripped the family as they realized that whatever was in the attic was descending the stairs. Then a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. It was Victoria. Her sudden and violent death stunned them, but whatever had caused her demise was not yet finished. One by one, the family members were attacked and killed in the dark recesses of the barn. Each victim was struck with a pickaxe, a tool commonly used by farmers, dealing fatal blows that sent their skulls cracking and their life essence spilling onto the ground. Their bodies were then dragged into the barn and concealed under a pile of hay, effectively hiding their lifeless forms from view. Only their lifeless eyes stared vacantly into the abyss, witnessing the horror that unfolded next. As the family perished in the barn, the youngest member of the household, little Maria, was not spared either. She was found dead in a pool of her own blood, her tiny body riddled with axe wounds. The family's maid, Maria Baumgartner, was also viciously attacked and left for dead. Thus, the lives of 6 individuals were tragically cut short that fateful night, their souls now inhabiting an ethereal realm beyond human perception. Despite the horrific nature of the crime, there was still a horrifying twist left in the narrative. After committing these heinous acts, the killer did not flee the scene. Instead, he settled into the farmhouse as if it were their own dwelling. Neighbors observed smoke rising from the chimney, indicating that someone was cooking meals and keeping a fire burning. Moreover, the cattle were fed and the dogs were let outside for their evening business. This unsettling behavior suggested that the killer had transformed the crime scene into their home, mocking the sanctity of the dead and disregarding the gravity of their actions. As days passed without any signs of the killer leaving, suspicion began to fall upon those living in the nearby area. Villagers questioned how such a brutal crime could go undetected for so long, wondering if the perpetrator might still be lurking in the vicinity. This lingering uncertainty cast a pall over the community, turning their homes into potential scenes of danger and their familiar streets into treacherous landscapes. After a week, when the family failed to show up for church, their absence raised concerns among the villagers. Finally, on April 12, 1922, a search party consisting of 80 men ventured into the farmhouse to investigate the missing family. Their worst fears were confirmed when they discovered the bodies of the entire family hidden in the barn and the house. The sight of the slain family sent shockwaves through the community, leaving them grappling with the gravity of the tragedy that had befallen their neighbors. News of the gruesome crime spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves far beyond the borders of the quiet village. Authorities were quick to launch an extensive investigation, questioning over 100 suspects in an attempt to unravel the mystery behind the heinous crime. However, despite the magnitude of the investigation, justice remained elusive as no one was ever arrested for the crime. Numerous theories emerged attempting to explain the motive and the identity of the killer. Some speculated that the crime was committed for financial gain, while others believed it was driven by personal vendetta. The remoteness of the farmhouse and the lack of immediate discovery allowed the perpetrator to evade authorities for days, further complicating the investigation. The absence of concrete evidence and witnesses left investigators baffled, making it challenging to narrow down the countless theories and identify a single culprit. Although numerous suspects were questioned, none could be definitively linked to the crime. Some pointed fingers at drifters or outsiders, believing that someone with no connection to the family would be capable of such brutality. Others suspected that the motive was robbery gone wrong, suggesting that the killer had intended to steal from the family but had resorted to murder when confronted. However, these theories were hampered by the lack of physical evidence or credible eyewitness accounts. The relentless media scrutiny placed immense pressure on the investigators to solve the case, but the complexity of the crime and the absence of clear leads made it a daunting task. As time went on, the investigation gradually lost momentum, leaving many questions unanswered and a sense of injustice among the community. The passage of years only deepened the sense of frustration and despair, turning the Hinterkaifeck murders into one of Germany's most enduring mysteries. To this day, the question of who committed the heinous crime and why remains a source of fascination and speculation. Some believe that the killer may have been someone known to the family, driven by a motive that was never fully revealed. Others argue that the brutality of the crime suggests a stranger with violent tendencies. However, the truth is that the absence of concrete evidence has left the case open to countless theories, each attempting to shed light on the darkness of that fateful night. As we reflect on the tragic events that unfolded at Hinterkaifeck, we are reminded of the fragility of life and the depths of human cruelty. The senseless loss of an entire family along with their maid shook the community to its core, leaving a scar that would never fully heal. The motive behind the crime, whether driven by greed, vengeance, or sheer malevolence, continues to elude our understanding, and the identity of the perpetrator remains a haunting enigma. While the passage of time may offer some solace, it has not diminished the impact of this horrifying crime. The Hinterkaifeck murders stand as a chilling reminder of the evil that can lurk in the shadows, preying on the innocence of unsuspecting families. As we remember the victims, may their souls find eternal rest and may their memory continue to inspire our pursuit of justice and understanding in the face of such senseless violence. Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and leave a comment below. If you have a scary story to tell, please send it to us. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay safe.